I am proud of my country's heritage. We're living on freedom soil. Brave men have gone before me here, unafraid to pray and toil.
So let's talk about the president, and we'll talk about the courts and the legislature and everybody else as we go along. There are about 16 things the president can do. If you look at the introduction to the Bill of Rights, it says that they are adding further declaratory and restrictive clauses. And the purpose of that is to prevent abuse and misconstruction. Added to this are the 9th and 10th Amendments. And they're very clear in the ratification letters just what they meant in the 9th and 10th Amendments. And that is that the government, any part of it, of the United States of America, can only do those things they're specifically given to do, and nothing else. When you combine this together with the introduction, we understand that we're declaring exactly what the government could do, and then restricting it to only those things that it's clearly, particularly expressly given to do. But that's how they fixed it. And this introduction tells you exactly what is the purpose. What is the purpose and what is the method of achieving that purpose of the people who ratified our Constitution, the people who actually made our government. This was the solution the people came up with. 3 years, everybody talking about it, over 2,000 people being involved. Once you remember that all the state legislatures had to approve the ratification process. Rhode Island said, no, we're not even going to get a ratification committee. We're not going to do it. And then they came back and they did. There are no inferred powers. There are no implied powers, okay? No. There's no broad powers. There are, though, those things which are clearly, particularly, expressly given it. And that's it. To any part of the government, president included. One thing the president cannot do, okay, is executive order. It is unconstitutional, I should say. President can, does, they've been doing it for years. It's gotten worse and worse. It's all of them. I'm not picking at anybody's group. I'm not picking at, the president today or the president last time or the one before that. They've all been doing it. There is no, if the president wants to make an order, he can order his departments. But that's not tantamount to a law. The only ones who can make a law are the Congress. That's it. Nobody else. And departments can't make things that are tantamount to a law. It's unconstitutional. The president can't do anything. He can order his departments to do things, but nothing that comes out to be a law. And the judges can judge cases, but only those cases concerning the laws made by Congress. If Congress is restricted from making a law in an area, then the judges can only say that's not our business. And that's pretty much how that goes. This whole thing, we're making our president, we the people, are making our president into Nimrod. That's what we're doing. We're making him into Nimrod. And one of the problems we have, we have people who've come here who are used to having the government be their master. When we started this thing, we the people, ratified this. Government was a tool. We were in charge. We put that right in the ratification letters. Made it clear. They are our servants. They're just working for us. We the people. We restricted the government so that we wouldn't abuse it ourselves. We restricted the government so that other people and other nations wouldn't abuse it, and even that the people who we put in charge in the government wouldn't abuse it. We restricted it, said you can only do these things. People have learned how to manipulate and get around that, and they've been doing it for years. It's important to know, what it was that really made this country great and what it was that allowed people to worship God according to their conscience. And B, why it's so important to keep the restrictions of government. And then how was that set up? Well, we can see this and we will see this in the Constitution as we go through it. Okay? The president, though, is to keep the laws that we have diligently. Okay? Not to make up his own. And we're hurting ourselves by allowing this power. And you can't blame the presidents. They get away with it. The news media act, they act like, oh yeah, he has the right to make an executive decision or executive order, whatever you want to call it. No. He can do that. It's just not constitutional. And there's a good reason. There's a better reason for the president not to be making these decisions that act like they're a law than there is for all the good reasons the presidents come up with, and the Congress and everybody else, for them to be breaking it. The better reason is that if we lose, and we will, and we are losing, the ability to worship God according to your conscience. And the gravity of that in many countries around the world right now, it's illegal to worship as a Christian and to do that publicly. And they'll actually, just for talking about it in your house with your family, can arrest you, fine you, imprison you, and kill you. This is going on, and it's quite rampant. In many countries where they have, quote unquote, lightened up on everything, the fact is still only certain churches, and they're tied to the government, can openly worship. And what happens as soon as you do that, you end up with having corruption. And, wonderful people, good intentions, just can't tie the two together. The Church of England, during the time, I think, about of Tyndale, there was a lot of people trying to reform the church, trying to get the Word of God in the English language, began. And Henry broke away from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church had run England and persecuted anyone who wasn't Catholic. Then, once Henry took over with the Church of England, the Catholics became persecuted. But still, anybody else were on the outs. That's why you ended up with the Separatists, who became the Pilgrims, who ended up at Plymouth Rock, and ended up starting a whole community of people here. We've lost the 9th and 10th Amendment. They literally are no longer followed, and as we go through this, I'll show you why that is and where that is. They're working very diligently to get rid of the Second Amendment. We have to see that when you lose the Second Amendment, you can't keep the First. You're going back to maybe 1770s type of thinking, and it's a lot of repression. What has changed the world was the fact that in our Constitution we restricted the government and allowed people to worship God according to their conscience. And somebody did. And many of you will say, well, if our group was just in charge, it would be fine. No, it doesn't work that way. There are tons of problems from allowing people the right to choose. There are tons. But all those problems aren't nearly as bad as when the government starts to choose for everybody. That's history. That's what the people who started this country knew. And that's what changed the world. People went out from here, people came to here and saw people with the right to choose. They made a lot of mistakes, but the fact is, it was so much better, and they were thrilled, and our country prospered. Been a lot of things done wrong, by the government, by the people. Evil's still there, the devil's still there. That doesn't change. But we have to see this basics of restricting government is what changed not only this country, not only government forever, but the world. And as we've lost this, and as we're losing this, and when it goes away, you're going to drop way back. It will be devastating to what people do on this planet. If you think how things were in 1770, let alone, how they were in 1550. What changes everything is people learning, believing the Word of God, and acting upon it. The only way to keep it is to keep the restriction of government, which I'll show you as we go through what that's supposed to be.
Yes, our God still bears his mighty arm when men to him are